All right, we're getting close. Everything you got to know about 1984, Part 3, Chapter 5. We know from the last incident in Chapter 4 that this short chapter is about Winston's experience in Room 101. We finally get to find out what it's all about. This chapter talks about how Winston feels like he has had some sort of sense as to where he's been at location-wise in the Ministry of Love during different portions of his captivity. High in the air, ground level, underground. He thinks that room 101 is as deep as you could go. Maybe that's symbolic. The room is decent size, and there are 2 tables in it covered with the type of a material you might see on a pool table. Winston is strapped in a chair, and he cannot move at all. O'Brien comes in and tells him that Winston already knew what was in room 101, the worst thing in the world. A guard comes in and sets down this wire box on the table that's the furthest away from Winston. O'Brien continues talking that the worst thing is unique to every individual, ranging from a horrible death to something small that might not kill somebody. O'Brien moves so Winston can see better, and he sees that on the table is a cage with compartments, and on one end has like this catcher's mask that's connected to the cage so that your face can go in it, and there are rats in the cage. So O'Brien tells Winston the worst thing in the world for him is rats. Winston understands why there's a mask attached and starts to freak out. O'Brien just kind of stays calm and detached and talks to Winston about the nightmare Winston always had about something terrible on the other side of the wall, and says that something terrible was rats, and you just couldn't even bring yourself to think about it. Winston kind of starts to grovel, saying this is not needed, it's not necessary, and he would do whatever they wanted him to do. O'Brien actually doesn't really answer. He just kind of continues to lecture that breaking human willpower sometimes requires more than pain, but a deeper psychological pressure is what's needed that can't be resisted. For Winston, rats are that pressure, and Winston will end up doing what he needs to do. Now, of course, Winston's confused because he's not really sure what they expect him to do, and they won't tell him. So O'Brien brings the cage right in front of Winston where he can see the giant rats inside, and he has the sensation of being like alone, like his brain like warps, right? He's like a million miles away with the blood pounding in his ears, and O'Brien just keeps lecturing him about rats, how they eat meat and they know when someone is helpless, which is why they're going to attack babies that are left alone and sick people in the horrible parts of town. The rats in the cage start trying to attack each other. O'Brien picks it up and moves it close to Winston's face, clicking something in the cage to kind of get it set up. Winston tries to move involuntarily, but he can't move at all. O'Brien explains that when he clicks the next lever, the door to the mask that fits over his head will open, and the rats will have access to eat through his face in order to escape. Sounds lovely. The cage comes closer, and Winston can smell them now, and so again he freaks out. He almost passes out from panic, but he comes back believing the one way to save himself is to put someone else in his place. The mask is closer to his face, and the rats begin to sense what's about to happen, and they start getting excited. One of them jumps up and down. O'Brien mentions that this used to be a punishment in China. So when the mask brushes Winston's face, he all of a sudden just screams out over and over to do it to Julia, to let her suffer this fate rather than him, wanting her in his place, and he means it. He has the sensation of falling after yelling this and falling, but as he's falling in his mind, he hears the click of the cage closing and knows that the rats are not going to be released. That's how the chapter ends. So what do we get out of this chapter? Well, this chapter is the climax of the book. It's been set up that room 101 is like this mysterious room that is the most dreaded end a citizen in Oceania can face. And we know from the end of the previous chapter that Winston's final emotional holdout against the party is facing this showdown with the party in room 101. The setup shows the lengths the party goes to know that, those they make suffer, they know them inside and out. In order to get Winston to be completely broken, to betray Julia, they know him well enough to know what the exact psychological pressure points are so that they're going to win where he's most vulnerable. No cost is too great, no dehumanization too horrific to wield power over others for the sole purpose of breaking them, and ultimately, as Winston O'Brien has told us, just to have power. The goal is for Winston to conform and embrace every aspect of the party of his own will. So he has to willingly sacrifice or betray Julia because he wants to. By not telling him the means to escape the rats, Winston chooses to give up Julia to want her in his place, finally betraying her and any sense of loyalty and any sense of holding out against the party, right? There is no doubt, if there ever has been, that the party is morally bankrupt in their governing and control over society. They're complete monsters. They're devoid of humanity, with a thirst only for the suffering of others and fulfillment of their desires, and they're determined that everyone in their grasp not only kind of believes them, but embraces their totally cracked, corrupt version of reality. This is Orwell's kind of final condemnation against the brutal regimes he sees operating in the world around him during his lifetime. So hopefully, again, this kind of helps you think about what's going on in this chapter, why there's a Room 101, the point that Orwell's trying to make. Questions, comments down below would be great. Otherwise, please like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff, and we will see you at the end of the book. Next chapter is it. You are about to make it.